Life stories, a journey of rejection, resilience, and redemption, in a world where dreams are often dismissed and expectations weigh heavily. One woman's journey to success proves that the path to fulfillment isn't always straightforward. Megan, a young woman rejected by her family's legacy, embarks on a journey of self-discovery, working tirelessly to fund her own education and prove her worth. But when her family's company falls into crisis, she must decide whether to help those who never believed in her. Join us as we dive into this powerful story of resilience, ambition, and the ultimate triumph of self-belief. Subscribe to the channel to start today's story. I had always been the dutiful daughter. Growing up, I never questioned my family's expectations for me, because it seemed like the only path available. But everything changed the day I stood in my father's study, gripping the leather chair until my knuckles turned white. I was trembling, not from fear but from the realization that everything I had worked for, my dream of going to law school, was being ripped away from me. All because of a decision I couldn't control. The trust fund I had counted on for law school was gone. Just like that. My father, who had always seen himself as the head of this family, sat behind his desk, his attention focused on his laptop, indifferent to the chaos around him. My brother Luke, with that ever-present smirk of his, lounged against the mahogany desk, completely relaxed, as if none of this was even important. "Sweetheart, be reasonable," my mother said, her voice smooth, practiced. She clasped her perfectly manicured hands in front of her. "The family business needs that money. Your brother has such promising ideas for expansion. We're all counting on him." Promising ideas. I almost choked on the words. How could they not see how much they were belittling me? Like the nightclub venture that had lost $500,000 in 6 months. But of course, to them, that was just a learning experience. Luke, always the golden boy, straightened his designer tie and added, "Mom and Dad understand the value of taking risks in business. You know how they raised us." My father raised his hand to silence us both, an action I had seen countless times throughout my childhood. "Megan, we've discussed this. Law school is an interesting hobby, but it's not a practical career choice for someone of your standing. The money will be better used supporting your brother's ventures." Hobby. The word stung. It felt like acid on my tongue. I had graduated summa cum laude. I had already been accepted to one of the top law schools in the country. Yet to them, it meant nothing. All the years of hard work, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, it was all just a game to them. "Mother," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, "I've already been accepted to law school. This is a real opportunity for me." She interrupted me before I could finish. "Really? Megan," she said with a dismissive frown. "When was the last time you saw a woman from our circle practicing law? It's simply not appropriate." I looked at her, her concerned frown. My father, completely engrossed in his laptop screen. And Luke, with that insufferable grin on his face. The same scene had played out countless times in our lives. My brother's mediocrity was constantly praised while my academic achievements were met with polite disinterest. His failed business attempts were always considered learning experiences, while my ambitions, my dreams, were always dismissed as flights of fancy. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my emotions. "That trust fund was from grandmother," I said, my voice cracking. "She specifically left it for my education. And as trustees, you have a responsibility to ensure it's used for its intended purpose." Father didn't even glance up from his screen. "The decision is final," he said, his tone final and cold. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You know what? Keep the money. I'll figure it out on my own." "Don't be dramatic, Megan." My mother sighed. "Why don't you help Luke with the marketing for his new restaurant concept? You've always had such a good eye for design." My heart sank. I turned to leave, my hands shaking. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, spinning around. "This isn't about the money anymore. This is about you never believing in me. Luke laughed. An obnoxious, mocking sound. Come on, sis. Don't make this into one of your scenes. Scenes. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Your scene? Like when you crashed Dad's Porsche and blamed it on the valet? Or when you borrowed Mom's jewelry for your girlfriend and claimed it was stolen? My father's voice boomed through the study. Megan. You're upset and not thinking clearly. Go home. Calm down. And we'll discuss this later. There's nothing to discuss. I shot back. I'm done trying to earn your approval. I'm done watching you hand everything to Luke while I fight for scraps of attention. I'm going to law school. And I'll succeed without your money and without your support. As I grabbed my bag from the floor. My legs shaky. I knew this was it. The last time I would ever set foot in this house. The family I had tried so hard to please had rejected me. And I had nothing left to prove to them. My heels clicked sharply against the marble floors as I walked away from the life I had known. From the family that had never truly seen me. The tears burned behind my eyes. But I refused to let them fall, not here. Not where they could see. As I reached my car. My phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. My best friend from college. How'd it go? Want to meet for coffee? I typed back quickly. They gave my trust fund to Luke. Meeting in 20 at our usual spot. The response came almost immediately. Those bastards. I'm ordering you the biggest chocolate muffin they have. A small smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Lauren had always been there for me. And I needed her more than ever now. I looked up one last time at the house I had spent so many years in. The house that never truly felt like home. And there, watching me from the study window, was Luke, smiling that same smug, self-satisfied smile. I held his gaze for a moment. Then got in my car and drove away. They thought denying me the trust fund would force me to give up on law school. They thought I would cave in to their expectations. To their comfortable, confined life. They were wrong. I didn't know it then. But that day marked the beginning of something much bigger than my dream of becoming a lawyer. It was the day I stopped being the dutiful daughter who sought their approval and started becoming someone they would one day need to reckon with. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My resolve hardening with each mile between me and that suffocating house. They had no idea what I was capable of. But they would learn. Oh. They would learn. 6 months passed. In those months, I didn't think about the family. I couldn't afford to. I couldn't afford to let their voices creep back into my head, whispering doubts about my worth, my future. I couldn't afford to think about the trust fund they had denied me or the company they had handed over to Luke. I had to focus on something else, survival. I worked 2 jobs. Pulling double shifts at a diner and waitressing at a small, upscale restaurant that catered to lawyers and businessmen. My shifts were long, sometimes extending late into the night. There were days when I lived on nothing but coffee and the occasional sandwich between shifts. But I had no choice. I had to put everything I had into the one thing that mattered, my law school fund. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the life I had dreamed of when I was younger. When I had imagined myself walking through law school doors as a proud, accomplished woman. But it was the life I had to make for myself. With my own hands. No more waiting for someone to hand me a seat at the table. I was building my own chair. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, I walked into the bar of the restaurant, hoping for a brief moment of rest before my next table arrived. The atmosphere was dimly lit, filled with the clink of glasses and hushed conversations. I set my apron down and slid onto the bar stool, catching my breath. That's when I saw him. Ryan Davis. He was a regular at the restaurant. An older man. Well-dressed. With the kind of demeanor that made him stand out even in a room full of high-powered professionals. He was a partner at one of the top law firms in the city. I had spoken to him several times before. Usually in passing. As he would chat with the other waitstaff between courses. But this time, there was something different about his presence. Something that made me pause. Blair, he said with a smile as I walked up to the bar. I was hoping you'd be working tonight. Can I get you anything? I shook my head. exhausted but trying to maintain my usual polite demeanor. "No. I'm good. What brings you here tonight?" "Mr. Davis, please." He corrected me with a grin. "It's Ryan. And actually, I have something for you." He slid an envelope across the bar, the sleek white paper contrasting with the dark wood surface. I picked it up slowly, my curiosity piqued. Inside was an offer letter. A paid internship. It was part-time, flexible hours, and would pay more than both of my current jobs combined. But what really caught my attention was the last part of the letter. It would look great on my law school applications. I don't understand," I stammered, my hands trembling slightly as I read the letter. "Why me? I'm just a waitress." "Why would you think I'm qualified?" Ryan chuckled softly, taking a sip of his scotch before leaning in slightly. "Because, Blair," he said, his voice steady and sincere, "you remind me of myself at your age. Determined, hard-working, and fighting against the odds. I've been watching you juggle 2 jobs while preparing for law school. That kind of dedication is rare. My firm could use someone like you." I stood there, stunned. Part of me wanted to protest. I didn't want to feel like I was accepting charity. I didn't want to feel like someone was handing me a way out. But the truth was, I had been struggling. The burden of working 2 jobs, day after day, was starting to weigh on me. And the opportunity in front of me, it was too good to pass up. "Lauren told me about your situation with your family," Ryan continued, as if sensing my hesitation. "She mentioned how you've been managing on your own. Look, I'm not offering this because I pity you. I'm offering it because I believe you deserve a chance to prove yourself." I glanced over at Lauren, who was now behind the bar, arranging wine glasses with a practiced air, clearly trying to avoid the conversation. "You knew?" I asked her, a mixture of surprise and disbelief in my voice. "She didn't tell me anything," Ryan said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "She just pointed out how hard you've been working. It's obvious." I turned back to the offer letter, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Could I really accept this? Would it be giving in to my family's idea of help? Or was this truly an opportunity to prove myself? My mind raced. Ryan's voice brought me back to the present. "Look, Blair, I understand your pride. But this isn't a handout. It's an investment in someone with real potential. We'll work you hard enough that you'll earn every penny. I just want you to think about it." I hesitated for a moment, the internal battle raging inside me. But as I looked down at the letter again, something shifted. Maybe this wasn't charity. Maybe this was exactly what I needed, someone to believe in me, even when my own family had failed to. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept charity," I said, my voice firm, but my mind already considering the possibility. Ryan smiled knowingly, leaning back slightly. "It's not charity. Blair. Think about it. Take the opportunity. You'll prove to yourself, and to them, that you don't need anyone's help to succeed." My heart beat a little faster as I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it," I replied, tucking the letter into my bag as I returned to my duties. That night, as I served my last table, I couldn't stop thinking about the offer. I imagined Luke's face when he found out I'd made it into law school without their money, without their approval. I imagined my parents' reaction when they realized their impractical daughter had succeeded despite their lack of faith. I would show them. I would show them all. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step on that path. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I juggled the weight of 2 jobs while trying to prepare for law school, all while weighing Ryan's offer. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the most exhausting periods of my life. But deep down, I knew that I had to keep moving forward. I had made a promise to myself, I would not let my family's rejection define me. I would build a life where I didn't have to beg for their approval, where I didn't have to prove myself every day. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the diner, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, my face pale from lack of sleep and my eyes heavy. But as I looked at myself, I knew that something had shifted inside me. I wasn't that girl anymore, the girl who begged for approval. I was becoming someone stronger. I had already made the decision to accept Ryan's internship. It was a step forward. It was the first step towards proving that I could make it on my own. The next morning, I sent the email accepting the internship. And just like that, everything started to change. The firm was eager to bring me on. And they made sure to set up everything I would need: paperwork, office hours, a schedule that worked around my other commitments. I felt a rush of excitement, but also a bit of fear. What if I wasn't good enough? What if I failed? But there was no turning back now. A few days later, I walked into the firm's sleek, modern office for my first day. It was a world completely different from the greasy diner where I spent most of my time. And I couldn't help but feel out of place. The polished floors, the glass walls, the smell of expensive leather, everything screamed success. And there I was, a girl who had worked her way through the most difficult months of her life, trying to carve out a future for herself. And now, standing in the midst of a law firm that could potentially change everything for me. Ryan was there to greet me. He offered a welcoming smile, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. "Ready to get started?" he asked. I nodded, determined to show him I was ready for this challenge. The first few weeks were tough. The work was demanding, and it took a lot of adjusting. I had to quickly learn how to navigate the fast-paced environment, how to handle clients, and how to tackle the legal work that was being assigned to me. I had no formal legal training yet, but I was determined to prove I could handle it. I threw myself into the work with everything I had, staying late at the office, reviewing case files, and doing everything I could to learn. Ryan, though, was always there, guiding me, offering advice, pushing me to do better. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I felt like I was drowning in all the information. But Ryan would always remind me to take it one step at a time. "You're not here by accident," he would say. "You've got what it takes." It wasn't long before I began to see results. I started to gain confidence in my work, and the partners at the firm began to take notice. They praised my attention to detail, my ability to think critically, and my drive to succeed. I was slowly carving out a name for myself in that world. And the more I succeeded at work, the more I realized that I was on the right path. But despite my growing success, there was always a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment. I hadn't heard from my family since I left. Not a word from my parents. Not a single message from Luke. It was as if they had erased me from their lives entirely. I tried to suppress the pain of their silence, telling myself that it was their loss, not mine. But deep down, I couldn't help but feel the sting. One day, as I was leaving the office late in the evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Luke. The first message I'd received from him in months. "Mom's crying again because you won't come to Sunday dinner. Stop being so selfish." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. How could he still not understand? How could they still not see what they had done? They hadn't supported my dreams. And now, they wanted me to drop everything for dinner that would be nothing more than a reminder of all the ways they had let me down. I stared at the message for a long time, my anger bubbling to the surface. But I knew I couldn't let them drag me back into their web of manipulation. I was stronger than that now. I deleted the message without responding, determined to focus on the life I was building for myself. I had already made so much progress. The internship was giving me the opportunity to prove my worth in a way my family never had. And no matter how many times they tried to pull me back into their world, I was done. "Don't let them manipulate you," Ryan had told me once. And I wouldn't. I had come too far to go back now. Later that night, as I sat on Lauren's couch, staring at the offer letter Ryan had given me so many weeks ago, I felt a surge of hope. I had made the right choice. I had taken control of my future. And I would succeed, on my own terms. But this wasn't just about law school or proving my family wrong. This was about finally understanding that my worth was not defined by their expectations or their rejection. It was defined by me. It had been several months since I made the decision to accept the internship. And with each passing day, I found myself growing into a stronger, more confident person. The work at the law firm became second nature, and I was steadily earning the respect of my colleagues and mentors. But there was still a lingering part of me. A part that kept me tethered to the past. No matter how hard I worked or how successful I became, I couldn't escape the feeling that my family still didn't see me for who I truly was. The feeling of abandonment had been eating away at me for months. My family, my parents and Luke, hadn't reached out. Not once. I had stopped expecting anything from them. But there was still a part of me that longed for their acknowledgement, for their approval. I had built my life without them. But it felt incomplete. It wasn't just about the money or the trust fund anymore. It was about the deep, unspoken wounds they had inflicted on me over the years. Despite my success at the firm, there was still a quiet ache within me. I had worked tirelessly to create a life for myself. But my parents' rejection still stung. I had pushed them away, told myself I didn't need them. But deep down, I knew that wasn't entirely true. I wanted them to see me, to see the woman I had become, the woman they had never believed I could be. Then, one day, just as I was beginning to settle into my new life, my phone buzzed. The text message caught me off guard, and for a moment, I just stared at it in disbelief. It was from Luke. "Dad's having heart problems. The company's in trouble. We need your help." The message was short, almost clinical, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. My father, the man who had never believed in me, who had dismissed my dreams as mere hobbies, was in trouble. And the company, the same company my family had prioritized over me for years, was now facing a financial crisis. The same company that Luke had run into the ground with my trust fund money. I felt a mixture of anger and something else, something deeper. I had spent so many years trying to push these people out of my life. And now here they were, asking for help. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about my family, my parents, and their failure to see me for what I was worth. And Luke, who had never once supported my dreams, was now coming to me for help. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my emotions. I had worked so hard to get to this point, to build a life I could be proud of. I couldn't let them drag me back into their world, back into their toxic web of control. But something inside me knew that I couldn't just turn my back on them. Not entirely. After a long pause, I typed out my response: "I'll help. But only on my terms." The decision was made. And despite my anger, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about doing what was right. About taking control of the situation. And about finally standing up for myself in a way I never had before. The following day, I met with Luke. He was a shadow of the arrogant, smug brother I once knew. The designer suits were gone, replaced with a disheveled look that matched the mess his life had become. He was no longer the golden boy. He was a man at the end of his rope. And he knew it. "I know I don't deserve your help," Luke said, his voice shaky. "But Dad's sick. The company is collapsing. And I don't know what to do. Please, Megan. I'm asking for your help. I know we've had our differences. But you're the only one who can save us." His words were filled with desperation. And for the first time in a long time, I saw the vulnerability that had been buried beneath his arrogance. But there was also guilt. Guilt for the way he had treated me. Guilt for the choices he had made. "You're asking for a lot," I said, my voice cool. "You and Dad have treated me like nothing more than an afterthought. You've ignored my dreams, mocked my ambitions. And now you want me to save your company?" Luke's face tightened, and he looked away, his expression pained. "I know. And I'm sorry for that. But please, Megan. The company is my responsibility now. I never wanted it to end like this. I looked at him for a long time, my anger still simmering. But something in his voice made me pause. This wasn't about the past. It wasn't about the way my family had treated me. This was about the future. About doing what needed to be done to protect the people who depended on the company, people who had nothing to do with the mistakes of the past. Finally, I nodded. I'll help. But you'll work under me, Luke. You'll learn what it means to actually run a company. Not just play at it. His eyes widened with surprise. But he didn't argue. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. His voice steady. And just like that, I found myself stepping into a new role. A role that wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about teaching my family a lesson. It was about restoring what was broken. About taking back the power that had always been mine. And in that moment, I knew that this was my time. I wasn't just fixing their mistakes, I was building something stronger. Something that would last. I was finally doing something on my own terms. And it felt, for the first time, like I was truly free. As time went on, I stepped into my new role as the leader of the company, taking control of the decisions that would shape its future. I worked tirelessly, not just to fix the financial crisis but to reshape the company's culture. I made changes that were necessary, not just for survival, but for long-term success. Luke, under my guidance, began to learn what it truly meant to run a business. And for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the man he could become. The arrogance I had once despised began to fade, replaced with humility and a new understanding of responsibility. The company slowly began to recover. And as I looked around at the results of my hard work, I realized something. This wasn't just about saving a failing business. It was about proving to myself that I could overcome the challenges that life had thrown at me. I had done it without their support, without their belief in me. And I had succeeded. Then, one evening, as I sat in my office looking over the latest reports, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mother. I'm proud of you, Megan. I know I didn't always show it. But I see you now. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to smile. The road to redemption hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. I had earned everything I had. And more importantly, I had learned to believe in myself. And as I looked toward the future, I knew one thing for sure, the best was yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more life stories.